Welcome to downtown SUKHUMVIT. It could get noisy, so I'll just start anyway. First of all, I've got to say thanks for all the positive feedback on part 1. For this video, I'll be telling you a story with a twist, and to do that in a more entertaining way, I'm going to be going to different locations around Bangkok to tell that story, if that makes any sense. Anyway, let's crack on. Well, considering the current circumstances, Soi 7 here on a Saturday evening is actually quite lively. Anyway, here's a question that you don't get on Mastermind or any game shows, probably because the answer is quite open-ended, I suppose. The question is, what drives a seemingly intelligent man to uproot his entire existence to a village outside Buriram with a woman he's only met online? He's planning to marry her, buy a house, a car, help her start a business as well with his meagre savings. And I'm going to tell you the story and you can make up your own mind. It's a bit complicated in parts, so I'm going to try and tell you this in the simplest way I can. So a bit of background, John and Nock have been chatting online for 9 months. John is 53 from London. He's about to quit his job that he's done for 20 years. He's got a decent amount of savings. Nock is 37, she's from Buriram, she's never worked. John has already proposed to her, she's accepted. He's also going to help her start a new business, buy a house and a car. One of his worst habits is that he's a habitual drinker, but denies he's an alcoholic. Every night after work, he knocks back 3 or 4 pints. On his way home, he buys a few more cans in the shop, drinks them at home, goes to sleep. He's been doing this for about a decade, and he's promised to do the right thing, quit the booze on his wedding night. So we're going to see how his progress goes after he meets Nock. Anyway, John arrives in Bangkok. He meets Nock and her family at the airport, and they make a swift transfer to a van and go straight to Buriram. He spends the next few days severely jet lagged, drunk. It's party time for everyone. A couple of days later, they have a traditional Thai wedding in the village, and then they jet off for 5 days honeymoon in Phuket. When they return, they move into the brand new house that John has paid for. Nock's family and friends all live nearby, which is really convenient. I think more for them than him. He's also noticed that Nock has a younger sister called who is a bit slimmer and more attractive than she is. She speaks great English and she's a regular visitor, so she's great to have around the house. She helps with the communication between John and Nock, which is pretty basic to say the least. Nock has this idea to open a laundry, and they discussed it before they met. During those discussions, John agreed to bankroll the whole thing because he thinks it will be a good little income for her, keep her busy. She hadn't had a job since she was a teenager in the supermarket in Buriram, and all her family agree it's a great idea as well. So the next couple of weeks are spent sourcing the equipment and business premises for the laundry. John wants to get it up and running as soon as possible because hopefully the auntie will get back under the rock where she came from. He really hates her. He's convinced there's something underhand and suspicious about this woman. She's always hanging around the house, influencing all the major purchasing decisions. Nock won't say anything because of the face issue, and this auntie was even hanging around the money tray on the day of the wedding. John had his eye on her from day one. So 3 months later and business in the laundrette is pretty bad. Most people in the village prefer to go to the supermarket where they can get their clothes washed in the machine for 20 baht. Nok's auntie has set up their machines at 50 baht, telling her that they would get rich a lot quicker that way. Well, that's the logic anyway. So a quick situation report on John. His abstinence from alcohol has been a bit hit and miss. He did give up on the wedding day, but he suffered quite badly with withdrawal symptoms. He was sweating a lot, he was irritable, and he couldn't sleep. So he got some medication from a pharmacy that helped him through. Then he got addicted to that. He's found a community of expats living near the village. They all drink in a small shop house area nearby, and he's back into old habits. The failed laundry hasn't helped. It's put pressure on his finances. Nok's auntie seems to think he's got a bottomless pit of cash. She's putting pressure on Nok to get more money out of him. She wants to open another branch, believe it or not. So the next month or so are critical to John's well-being, and he's been contemplating getting out of this and going back to England. So we'll see what happens. John and Nok's love life has pretty much died out completely. She's going to bed every night really early while he just sits downstairs on the sofa watching TV, movies or playing around online. He's also taken up drinking and smoking again, which Nok really hates. She says it makes the furniture smell, which I think she's got a point, but John's argument is, well, I paid for it, so things are looking pretty grim. He's been going online for relationship advice as well. He's joined a few discussion forums, and while most of the advice has been pretty positive, some of the trolls have been advising him some weird things like commit suicide or burn down Nok's family home. John thinks he needs to get out of Buriram for a break, so he's planning to take a trip to London, back to his old mates and civilization for about a month. Not long after arriving in London, John gets a pretty disturbing email from Nok, who accuses him of sleeping with her sister Om. Now, as much as John would love that to be true, it obviously wasn't, and it takes a 2-hour phone call with them both in tears declaring their undying love to each other before she's convinced. He even tells her that they're going to move to England and start a new life together. Anyway, things calm down. John enjoys the rest of his month in London with his old mates. Just before he's due to fly back to Thailand, Nok sends him an email that really pisses him off. She tells him that she's going to sell the laundry business to the auntie and then reinvest that money with another business with the auntie, a chain of hair salons. He has a blazing row with Nok on the phone, swearing, shouting, and nothing can prepare him for what he finds when he gets back to Buriram. John gets back to Buriram and finds that his key no longer fits the front door. He can't get in, so he's banging away on the door. Nok looks down from an upstairs window, starts screaming and shouting at him, saying, "You slept with my sister." John thinks this is just a load of rubbish now. She's making excuses because he can see the auntie sort of behind her in the room. Anyway, John wants to talk to Nok one-on-one because he still thinks he can convince her somehow that they got something going. So he has to get into the house somehow. He breaks the downstairs window. Just as he's climbing in, he feels something hit him hard on the back of the head and he's on the floor, out cold. John wakes up, he's got a serious headache and he's sitting in a car that is being driven at about 100 miles per hour. Behind the wheel of that car is a German guy who is the boyfriend of one of the neighbours in the village. He takes him to his house and lets John stay for a couple of days. John gets himself together and plots his next move. He realises he can't go back to the house. He's got his phone and his wallet with him, so he decides there and then he's going to get out of Buriram, get out of Thailand, go back to England, forget about everything, wipe the slate clean and start afresh. Or so he thinks. So, was that the climatic, predictable ending you were thinking of? Not quite. This is now a combination of evil minds working together. In John's case, he's back on the demon drink. It's clouding his judgment, erratic behaviour, Nock and her auntie conspiring together like a couple of witches, trying to make his life hell, screw him for what he's got. The story's not over yet, so let's hear the rest. So John returned to London and started writing an online blog. It detailed his life living in a Thai village, his marriage to Nock, as well as his interaction with all her family and friends. He wanted it to serve as a deterrent to anyone else thinking of doing the same thing. But this was a blog with a slight difference. John's blog was very sexually explicit, clearly designed to humiliate Nock and her family. It wasn't long before it became a hit with Thai-based discussion forums where guys would exchange stories and intimate details of their sexual conquests in Thailand. One day out of the blue, John receives an email from someone claiming to be a lawyer. This apparent lawyer told John they could help him recoup some of the money he lost while he was married to Nock. They said they could mount a lawsuit against Nock's ownership of that house John had bought, and then they could get the house transferred into their name. They would then sell it on John's behalf and John would get some of his cash back. John of course fell for it hook, line and sinker. He was down to his last 10 grand. But the problem was, it would cost him 15 grand. So John had no choice but to borrow the money off his mum. So John transfers the money to this lawyer and the paperwork looks official, the phone numbers all check out, and he assumes that everything is legitimate. A couple of days later, the lawyer contacts him again, asking for a further £3,000 to cover expenses. Well, I know what you're thinking, and you'll be absolutely right. This story did come to a predictable end, and all of a sudden the phone calls went unanswered and the emails never got replied to. The lawyer basically vanished off the face of the earth. And John was at the lowest he's ever been. And to cut a long story short, he took his own life on the railway line between London and Brighton in 2015. I think in John's case, one of his failings was that he chose to live his life online, and he was giving a running commentary of his progress in trying to recoup some of the cash he spent on Nock's house with that so-called lawyer, and he fell victim to a lot of trolls. In the days before social media, a lot of expat discussion forums were the go-to places for news, views, ideas, gossip, and making friends in the real world. Then along came Facebook and Twitter. A few of the forums lost readership and fizzled out, but a few of the more established ones are still going. Just like social media, discussion forums can get addictive, and it wasn't unusual to be spending 2 or 3 hours a day posting on threads. It's nice to see some of the older forums still active, albeit with a pool of members maintaining a certain status quo day after day. If your face doesn't fit, your life will not be pleasant. But that's the nature of forums, isn't it?